Okay, we're ready to look at the torso deformations and also the upper neck a little bit. Let's just hide our control objects there, leave only the deformers, and we can check out what's going on. So the first thing is, I had mentioned that in the case of the neck, we could see here in the back that we're getting a lot of pull from the neck joint on the upper back, and we want to really diminish that. So that's one thing we're going to work on. When he goes backwards like that, it doesn't look too bad here on the front. So it's mostly on the back. And then as for the torso, we can see there's quite a bit of loss of volume right there. That doesn't look too bad. There's a big problem right here. Huge loss of volume on the pectorals, so we're gonna have to look at that. And so basically most of the work is going to be about fixing this problem and also giving our thoracic cage a more solid shape than what it has right now. And the back of the neck. So let's get to work. I'm going to start with the neck just basically because that's going to be the easiest part to take care of. So let's bring up our palettes, and here we have our vertex maps and our info and statistics table. So let's look at the neck and let's see where the problem is for the neck. So looks like it's going to be this joint right here. Yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of weight down here. So let's just get rid of that. So let's look at our neck weight map, which is right there. We can deselect the joint and just select the weight map and see the influence. And I'm going to shift select the mesh. Let's change our display mode to VMap so I can see a little bit more clearly. Although it's still kind of faint down here, but I guess you can see. And let's go to our weighting tab, and we're going to use the scale down brush, and we can hide the palettes right now. Let's bring this up to max, and let's start painting over here. Uncheck live deformers to make things a little bit faster. As you can see, we're regaining a little bit of shape here on the torso, so that's a lot better. You can keep some weight there again to see some movement, but you don't want it to be too pronounced. Like for example, down here when he moves his head backward, you can see there's a little bit of volume loss in this part of the neck because the vertices are sinking. So let's also scale those down, let's say by 75%, like so. Yeah, a little bit more. There you go. That looks better. I could actually still take things a little bit further. There, that's even nicer. Yeah. That looks a lot better for the neck of the character. One of the nice things about using the VMAP display mode is that since your entire character is shaded on this constant green color and the wireframe is barely visible, you can more or less judge silhouette on your character. So that's something that is very important, especially for animators. You want to make sure that the silhouette of your character reads okay. So let's bring back our palettes. I'm going to deselect this weight map and go back to GL mode. So that's better. Now let's talk about the volume preservation. So we took a little bit of we looked into it already in some of the previous videos, into some of the volume laws that comes from the joints. And one of the things that might be an influence on how this works is the interpolation type used by each one of these, each influence on the mesh. And basically that means how the weights are calculated in areas where two or more influences meet. So for example, for the torso, you have all these areas on the torso where all these joints are meeting, let's say vertices along this loop, where you need to calculate the weights for the joint over here, and sometimes even further. So there's different ways of calculating that interpolation, and I'm going to show you what effect those have on the deformations on the character. So for example, let's go to a pose. I'm looking for something that will make it kind of obvious, like this one, for example, where you can see that the torso here is shrinking as the character turns. Now, if we go to our Deformers tab, you remember we have this normalizing folder for the body bind that we performed on the character. So if you select that, well, the first thing that happens is all the character gets colored, displaying each influence inside of the folder. But you have this interpolation setting for the folder itself, and this enables you to set different interpolation types per influence in here. So for example, each one of these individual influences has a different interpolation type. There's only two, parametric and linear. But the folder itself also has three different ones. Local means that you use the ones set on the influence itself. But you can also change this to either having all the deformers use a linear interpolation or a quaternion interpolation. So linear is the most common, and it tends to be very fast, but it has a problem that it tends to have this loss of volume effect when twisting is involved. Whereas quaternion interpolation is a much better solution for these kind of scenarios. So let's look at that. Let's just select quaternion and see if the shape of the character changes. So as you can see, it regained some volume here on the chest. Let me put this back to a local so you can see the difference. There you go. You also see some difference of volume on the neck. But it does behave differently in parts of the character that just have a one-axis rotation, like such as the elbow, for example. Let's go to a pose where the elbow is bent, something like that. So let's again select the folder, and you're going to see what happens here in this area of the mesh when I put it back to local. See, you get a different shape. So in the case of this character, it seems that quaternion is doing a nice job, but I am not going to say, okay, setting your quaternion interpolation is going to solve all of your problems. It's actually going to be more of a case-by-case thing you have to perform for certain characters or certain deforming meshes. You should go into any normalizing folder that you're using and trying to change the interpolation type to see what you get, and then you can decide what works best for your particular case. And actually, I would say that the best system would be one where you can set interpolations to linear or quaternion on a per influence basis, not as a global setting as it is today. But right now what we have is a global setting, so for now just use what looks best. In this case, I'm going to leave my character using quaternion interpolation. And I'm going to go here and see if anything changed on the movement of the neck. And I can see that everything is looking okay. So now let's take care of the torso of the character. So as you can see, we have some interesting twisting here. That's just part of the animation. But one thing I'll do is I'm going to go into my weight map list. I'm going to get rid of the utility viewport for now. And I'm just going to go through the spine influences, the spine weight maps, to see what they're doing. So let's go and select the first one. It's influencing this area down here, which seems to look okay. Then we have the second one, which is mostly here, the upper abdomen and sides of the character. Then we have the third one, which seems to be the lower rib cage, although it's a little bit faint. And then for the fourth one, we have mostly influence on the back, but none on the front. And then we have the fifth one, which is the opposite. And our sixth weight map, which is the upper back area, and some here on the front. And then we have the neck. Okay, so we're gonna have to adjust some of these weights, as you've probably seen. Mainly what I'm gonna do is I'm going to try to get a harder line here on the lower rib cage for the character, so that when he does something like this, we get a better shape down there and not so much stretching either. Same thing for the pectorals over here. We're going to try to make him a little bit more defined. So let's do that. So let me go to a pose where we see some twisting coming from this guy right here, which seems to be the one driving this weight map. Yeah, that's him right there. I want to see him rotate a little bit. We also have to look into this. And actually, I'm going to look into this before I start painting on the torso, because what's going on here might have an outcome on the rest of the deformations. So let's see what's going on in these areas. I'm going to go and select a vertex right there. And let's get back our utility viewport and see what is influencing this vertex right there, because this is a good representation of what's going on in the entire pectoral area. So we can see that we have a little bit of influence coming from spine 02. I'm not too concerned about that. A little bit from spine 03, spine 05, that's okay. Okay, here's a huge influence, and that is coming from the clavicle, which is definitely not what I would expect. I would not expect the clavicle joint to have that much influence over here. And it looks like that's it. It's mostly being influenced by the clavicle and just slightly by the spine joints, which is definitely not what we would like. So let's select the clavicle, the upper left clavicle, and as you can see, this is the problem. We have a huge influence coming from the clavicle all the way down to the mid-torso section. So that's definitely not something we want to have. So let's find the right clavicle. Okay. And I'm going to start working on this one first. So let's grab our scale down brush and let's scale down this entire area. And as you can see, we start to get some shape back. And this one, I'm just going to go ahead and erase it entirely. So that's getting us back our character to our a more reasonable shape. There's even influence on the arms, as you saw. Let's definitely get rid of the influence on the back. Okay, let's continue to scale down this section over here. Definitely don't need to see influence on the back of the arm. Now, it still looks horrible, but we're getting somewhere. We're gonna take a look at this, and this means that probably there's not enough influence coming from the joints that should be influencing this, which would need to be, I'm thinking about this guy right there, spine 05. Okay, so let's look at because spine 06 is too far up, so we're gonna paint on weight for this spine 05 deformer. Okay, so let's grab our paintbrush, and when I paint weight, I like to start with a really light weight here, let's say 15%, and I prefer to do several brush strokes. Oops, that's definitely not what we want. Let's take a look at that. Let's see how this is moving. Okay, I have to deselect the mesh. Yeah, that's spine 05. The other thing we can do is we can just wait until we put in our muscle joint right here that we're going to use to control the pectoral area. But let's just try to get a decent shape out of this. As you can see, this is definitely not very nice. Let's take a look at, again, the vertex weight that we would have right there. So this guy seems to be having a lot of weight coming in from spine 02, which is definitely not expected. Spine 02 is down here. We wouldn't need to have any weights up there from that influence. So let's go ahead and go through these guys. Yeah. And let's try to make their influence a lot more accurate. So yeah, it doesn't need to go that far up. So let's do a scale down. Let's keep going. And of course, later I'm going to be mirroring all this to make it more accurate. But for now, I'm just going to go and try to get my rough deformations going. Obviously, I'm not going to have you stand here and look at the entire process, but I just want to give you an idea of what I'm doing to get more or less the results that I'm looking for. So spine 03 also needs to be brought down a bit right there. Now this area looks better. Let's check out spine 04. This one actually has almost no influence, but it does have a lot here on the back. And lastly, spine 05, which I just painted. So one thing I'm going to do is, to avoid this, let's use a smooth brush. That was too much. And I'm going to balance it with, yeah, we're gonna need to adjust spine 04. Oh, there's weight here from spine 03. Let's erase it. There you go, spine 02. Perfect. Okay, I still have to see why I've got this ugly looking wrinkle there, but it's looking better now. So I think I'm gonna have to work with spine 04 right there. Doesn't really have a lot of weight here on the front. So let's paint, but again, small strokes. And 05 needs to scale down a lot here. Okay, and at this point what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to check who is having influence on, say, this vertex right here. So we have some influence coming from spine 01, 02, 03, 04, and 05, which we shouldn't have. The spine should not have influence here on the other arm as much. Let's see what else, if anything. The upper arm, that is okay, and that's it. So let's clean up again a little bit more our spine weights, and at this point I'm going to stop the video. I guess you get the really good idea of what I'm trying to do at this point. I'm just gonna work through my spine joints right now to get good weights in this area, which is being problematic right now. And as soon as I'm done, I'm gonna come back and show to you what I did. So I'll see you in a second. Okay, welcome back. I'm pretty much done with setting up the general weights for the torso. Of course, as we continue to advance with the rig of the character and do other things, we might have to go back and tweak the weighting a little bit more. This is basically just fiddling with weights from here on to the point where you deliver the rig, and you can continue doing this until pretty much the end of the project. Usually you're trying to fine-tune the deformations to be as accurate and nice looking as possible, but for the purpose of the exercise of learning through this course, I think I've arrived to the point where it looks decent enough. So let me show you what we got. And there's a couple of important things here that we will have to look into, and I'm going to be mentioning them. So first, we had the movement of the neck of the character. Let's see, there you see it. As you can see, it's a lot smoother over here than it was before. Of course, we can see some movement on this side of the character, and that's basically because I only worked on one side. We still have one side that is not being worked on yet. And then for the torso, I worked on this side over here, so the other side is not totally finished. But you can see for this side, for example, on this extreme pose, how the torso now is a lot better defined in terms of its shape. You get a more solidified shape here for the ribs of the character, the thoracic cage, and also the pectorals are retaining their shape a lot better. Even this is quite extreme, so but it holds up nicely now. Twisting looks okay. Even when he bends forward, this is pretty extreme too, but you can see that it's trying to keep the shape of the pectorals right there, and I'm going to show you what we did. This shape too, we have a better shape here for the torso. There's still this problem, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but for now, you can also see here the movement of the clavicle joint on this area of the mesh. There's a little bit of stretching here, so we need to smooth this out for sure. We're gonna come back later when we fix the other issue. So that's pretty much it, and I'm gonna show you what the weight maps look like. So we started here with the first spine deformer, then we went to the second, and as you can see, this one on this side has more weight than it should. This is the correct side. I'm going to show you how to fix that in a second. Then for the third one, I also took away some weight from this area, and for the fourth one, I added more weight onto the ribs, and this is what's pretty much making sure you retain the shape over here in this part of the rib cage, this weight map right there. So as you can see, there is some smoothness to it because I didn't want to have like hard edges or creases on the mesh, but this is pretty much what defines this part of the mesh. And then for the fifth one, of course, this one is one that is defining the pectorals as the main area to keep the shape of, and it's also smoothed a little bit downwards. And then for the sixth one, I did add a lot of weight here because there was none at all, and we were losing a lot of volume in this area when the character was bending backwards. So I did add a lot of volume there, and then I smoothed out the weight map just by selecting it and doing a smooth selected on the entire weight map. And that's pretty much it. I also changed the weights on the clavicles a lot. Let me show you what the clavicles look like. So instead of them being this red blob that we had all over here, now I really localized their effect to this part of the muscle of the character with a little bit of influence on the back and on the front. And that's pretty much it. So that's what the weight maps of our character look like now. I also took care of mirroring this clavicle weight map onto the other side of the character, to the other clavicle weight map. As you can see, this one is exactly the same. But of course, we have not mirrored the torso weight maps. I'm gonna show you how to do that. So let's go get first our palettes. I'm gonna go find, for example, spine 01 is not as noticeable as spine 02 is. So you can see this side is quite nice, smooth, but this side has a little bit more influence going upwards. There's even some influence on this vertex right there. If you can see, it's a little bit red in that area. So we need to get rid of that. Now, we're gonna use again this very useful script that we came up with in our last videos. So let's bring that up. And I'm going to show you how to use it to mirror weights from one side of one weight map to the other side of the same weight map. Because right now we've been mirroring from one weight map to a different weight map. So the first thing I need to do is select the vertices that I want to mirror. So I can do that easily by going into my Info and Statistics tab and going to the Statistics section. and select vertices by vertex map, and finding the vertex map that I'm using here, which is spine 0, 2. Let's click on the plus sign, and it's going to select the vertices affected by this weight map. And I'm going to go to a front view. And since the selection is not symmetrical, I am going to shift and middle mouse button select more vertices so that I can actually make this into a more of a symmetrical selection, especially here on the upper torso of the character. Something like that. Okay, so this is going to be what I'm going to be mirroring. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you go into the mirroring tool and you keep your mouse hovering over it to read the tooltip, you will see that it says for same weight map, select the vertices to be weight mirrored and press the button. Okay, so let's see what that does. I have my vertices selected, I have the weight map selected, and I click on the mirror button. Oh, well, what that did is actually mirrored the weight map onto itself. So now you can see that this side is okay, but this side is not okay anymore. So that's definitely not what we want. So I'm going to show you how to do that so that you can actually keep the side you like and have the mirror weights the way you need them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this weight map, the weight map that I have right now, and I'm going to copy it. So let's do a copy operation. And I'm going to go at the bottom of the list, and this is spine 0, 2. I'm going to create a new map, and this new map is going to be TMP. It's temporary. We're not going to really keep it later, and it's going to be spine 0, 2. It's a temporary weight map. We just need it in order to mirror the vertices the way we need them. Okay, so we do that. So now we have a new weight map, and it has no weights on it because when we created it, we left the initial value checkbox unchecked. And now all I have to do is paste the weights that I copied from the other weight map onto this new weight map. So there they are. This is my weights the way I had them on the original weight map. So I'm going to mirror these. Okay, now we have the correct weights on this side of the character, and this side is not correct anymore. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get rid of these weights on this side of the character just by doing a lasso selection. So I get rid of those. I'm going to copy again the weights on the selected vertices, and I'm going to go back to my spine 0, 2 weight map, and I'm just going to say paste. So as you can see, it pastes the values on the selected vertices. This red is gone, this area is fixed, and now I have a properly mirrored weight map on itself. That's pretty cool. Okay, so what you would do is, obviously, ideally, when I started to paint influences on these weight maps, I should have turned on symmetry on X, so that as I painted on one side of the character, the other side got painted too. But sometimes you forget about it, or it's not feasible because you're also turning your attention to other weight maps that are not mirrored across the character, and you want to paint on those, and it starts to get a little bit difficult to always come in and out of symmetry mode. So this is another way of just fixing these kind of issues. So for example, I could do the same for spine 0, 1, select my vertices over here. That looks okay. I'm going to copy those. I'm going to go to my temp weight map, and well, this guy I'd actually rather delete it because it holds weights from a previous weight map. So to not just have to spend time and trying to clear those, I'm just going to delete the thing, create a new one. I also ensure that I start from scratch. Paste here. Okay, then mirror. Get rid of the ones that I don't need. Copy and go back to the original one and paste. And that's what I would continue to do for each and every weight map on the spine. Obviously, I don't need to do that for the ones on the clavicle, but I need to do that for the ones on the spine. So I'm gonna pause the video and I'm gonna do the rest, and I'm gonna come back to show you the mirrored weight maps and one more thing that we need to take care of. So give me 1 second. Okay, I'm done. I also took the opportunity to clean up a lot of really small weights that the weight maps had. As I was selecting the vertices using the info and statistics viewport, I noticed that some of the weight maps that belong here to the spine were selecting vertices on the arms, or in some cases, as I went up the list, they were selecting and affecting, of course, vertices on the face and the head of the character. So I would just select those vertices, bring their weights down to 0, and keep on going. But basically, the process of copying and pasting onto a new weight map and copying and pasting back into the original one is what I used to mirror my weights. So as you can see, here's my spine 01, spine 02 is okay, spine 03 is symmetrical 2, same for 4, 5, and 6. So it's all looking good. And if I go back and check my deformations, now everything is okay on both sides of the character. So everything is looking very good up to this point. As you can see, the character is having a really nice shape, even without the help of our muscle joints that we're gonna add later on. So that's going to improve things a bit. But for now, I think we're in good shape. Now, the only thing that I wanted to come back to was, as I was working on this pose and I was trying to solve this problem, and I was having little success, obviously, I started to observe a little bit more carefully what the mesh was doing. And especially, I was looking at this vertex right here, right? Because this one really shows what the problem is actually about. The funny thing about it is, when the character was standing straight up, that vertex sits just right atop the this muscle right here. Okay, so it's right there, it's on top. However, as the character went backwards, that point moved from being here parallel to the ear almost to being on the front of the chest. So that indicates that the whatever joint was affecting it was twisting in a really funny way. So I went through my list of joints affecting that vertex, and I found out that the vertex that was affecting it the most was actually the clavicle joint, which is what we should see. The clavicle joint should be affecting this area of the character. But why was it affecting it in this really weird way? Well, the answer lies on what the clavicle joint is actually doing. So I went ahead and I selected it, and this is what I found. I want you to pay close attention to the local orientations of this joint as the character is moving. So you can see that when the character is in its well, neutral pose, pretty much, the z-axis is pointing downwards, and the x-axis is pointing up towards, well, where the joint is going afterwards, which is the root of the arm. Okay, so z is pointing downwards. And as the character bent backwards, the z-axis was still pointing downwards instead of pointing this way, which means that this joint is not following the rotations of the rest of the torso. And that's why we're getting this weird deformation over here, because this part of the character, which is under the influence of that joint, is trying to twist forward instead of following the natural rotation of the rest of the torso. So that's why deforming your mesh is actually important in the rigging process. You're not only trying to make it look nice so that it's going to be a nice character to render, but it also uncovers certain problems that might have creeped up in your rig and you're not aware of. So this is a great find. This is a great example of one of these problems that can come up in your rig, and you will not notice them until you start deforming your mesh with the rig. So what we're going to do is pretty much done with the weighting process on the mesh of the character. We've taken care of pretty much all the joints on the character itself, and now everything is mirrored properly. So in our next video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and fix this rigging problem and retest it against my deforming mesh to make sure that everything is working perfectly. So we're going to do that in the next video.